So can I rent my house out without forming an LLC? My name is Andrew Ayers. I'm a business law and estate planning attorney. I've got offices in Edina, Minnesota and New York City. Today we're going to look at a very common question I get. Maybe you own that piece of real estate from years ago and now you want to rent it out and make some money. And the question is, do you have to form an LLC to be able to rent it out? So it's a really common question that I get. And the usual scenario is, let's say you've purchased a property. Maybe you purchased it when you're single, you lived in it for a few years, now you're getting married and you and your new spouse are going to move to a bigger house. Maybe you're starting a family and that first house that you ever bought just isn't going to be cutting it for you. You need more space. And right now, with interest rates being high, you're not really wild about trying to sell it because you're worried about whether or not you're going to find a buyer. So then a lot of times you'll call someone like me. You'll call an attorney and say, do I have to set up an LLC to be able to rent out my property, or can I just rent it out in my own name? Now, the simple answer is you don't have to set up an LLC. There's no legal requirement that a property must be owned by some kind of a corporate entity, whether an LLC or whether some other form. So you can rent it out in your own name. You can absolutely do this. However, you want to consider what the LLC could offer you in form of protection from certain things when you're deciding whether or not you want to create that LLC. So the first and most common reason people will call me and say, I want to set up an LLC for my rental property is for what we call liability protection. So if you own the property in your own name and you're renting it out to somebody and something happens on the property, if somebody brings a lawsuit, they're going to be suing you in your individual capacity. And so now as the owner of that property, the lawsuit's against you, and if there's a judgment in the end, that judgment's going to be taken against you personally and possibly your personal assets, like that second home you're now living in with your spouse and your family. It's for this reason that many of my clients choose to use the LLC as the form to give them that first layer of liability protection. So that if there's that lawsuit about the property, there's been maybe someone was in a fight on the property, there's been some damage, maybe a tree fell down. The lawsuit is against the property and the value of the property itself. It doesn't extend through the LLC to your personal assets. So this liability protection is usually the first thing you're going to read about when someone says, should you do an LLC for your property or not? This is usually our primary advantage, and we want to make sure that we're considering it. Now, the flip side is, if you don't do the LLC, you can also make sure you're getting some protection. And the way you want to do that is talk to your insurance agent and make sure you have enough insurance on the property. You can usually take an umbrella policy to give you additional protection above your basic limits that you have on your property so that if there is that lawsuit, you are protected. Now you can make sure that that umbrella policy goes high enough, maybe $1 million, $2 million, $5 million, so that if there is that lawsuit, you're not going to worry about being sued for above that policy amount. Frankly, if you have a $5 million umbrella policy on your home, there's very few things that you're going to get sued for that would be in excess of $5 million, and so that insurance policy would protect you. And so if you have that insurance policy in place, I'm not telling you not to do the LLC, but I'm telling you that that insurance policy, an umbrella policy that's protecting you, is one good reason why you could rent the property out without using an LLC. Another important point to think of is, do you want your name in the public records? So we can use an LLC to actually hide who owns a property. So instead of John Smith and Jane Smith owning a property, you can set it up as the Blue Wallpaper LLC. And that's if people are searching your local property records to find out who owns the property, they're not going to see your name, they're going to see the LLC's name. Now, it depends upon how you like your privacy and if you mind getting that mail at home. So if your names are on there and you own a property, you're probably, like me, going to get a lot of mailings from realtors. Those realtors are always happy to reach out to you and say, hey, I know you own this property. Maybe it's by text, maybe it's by mail, maybe it's by email. Say, that's great that you own this property. Can I help you sell that property? Some people don't mind these emails. Some people don't mind all the postcards. Others get a little bit annoyed by it. The other thing to consider is if you're dealing with somebody who is either famous or semi-famous or locally famous and you don't want them to be listed as the property's owner, we can use that LLC, again, Blue Wallpaper LLC, so that the owner of the property is not clearly recorded in the local tax records, so you give them a little anonymity. The other thing you want to think about, whether you want the LLC or not, for your rental property is there can be tax advantages. So if you're renting out the property through an LLC, you can take that money that comes in and use it for repairs. You can pay a super to take care of the property. You can use it for all these business expenses that come with renting out the LLC. This will create a separate entity. You'll have to do a separate tax return for it. However, this way, all of the money coming in the rental property doesn't show up on your personal tax return. So depending upon where you are in tax brackets, you have to realize that those rental payments that are coming in monthly could actually cause you to go up a tax bracket or two, depending upon where you are on that scale. By using the LLC, you can hopefully get a tax advantage status, and it won't automatically drive your income tax rate up to the next bracket. This is where it's very important to speak with professionals, especially an accountant in this regard, to make sure you understand what the tax implications are and whether or not moving the property into the LLC will be a benefit or a disadvantage for you when you're creating your taxes. Now, whether you do it in your own name or do an LLC, one thing that I want you to remember, a tip from this video, is when you're preparing the lease, you need to make sure the lease is in the proper name. So if you own the property in your personal name, you're technically the landlord, and that lease has to be in your name with the tenant. If it's in an LLC, then the LLC is the party on the lease. All the payments go to the LLC. You'll create a separate bank account. The LLC will get a tax ID number, and everything will run through the LLC. Now, if you've already rented out the property in your personal name, and then down the road you move the property into an LLC, one tip I want you to remember is you need to move that lease over into the LLC's name. To do this, we do what's called an assignment of lease. Normally your lease agreement will have a provision that says how these things can be assigned. It's usually with a notice to the tenant saying, by the way, starting May 1st, your lease payments now go to Blue Wallpaper LLC. Most tenants don't care where their payments are being sent. If they're doing an automatic distribution from their bank account, they may not even know what the name on your bank account is. It may just go to a routing number and a bank account number. But however you have it set up, if that lease needs to be changed, you can usually do a simple assignment, and then the next time you sign a new lease, that new lease will be in the name of the LLC. If you have more questions, or if you'd like to discuss further whether or not your rental property should be in an LLC, we could set up a legal strategy session. You can go to my website, andrewmayers.com. There's a red Schedule a Consultation button on the front page. If you click that, you'll be taken to my personal calendar where we can set up a legal strategy session. It's a 15 or 20 minute phone call where we can talk about your current situation and whether or not that LLC makes sense for your rental property. If you like this video, you can hit the thumbs up or the like button below. You can always hop over to YouTube or Ayerslaw TV to subscribe for future episodes. And whatever you do with your property, whether it's moving it into an LLC or keeping it in your personal name with plenty of personal insurance, we want to make sure that you're making the right choice for you and your family.